addicted never gets help when they don't really want it. When they're at the bottom and say, you know, I really need help, change it around. But if we deny that we need help, we can't change it. And whether we're addicted to government programs or big spending, it just seems like we have to do more of the same. Today, they finally came around to admitting that the economy is in trouble. So what does the Congress quickly do? Appropriate $150 billion, and the Senate wants to appropriate and spend $200 billion, as if that's going to solve the whole problem. Where are they going to get the money?
That's right.
They don't have the money. They're going to have to borrow it or print it, which will make the problems worse, because it's the printing of money that undermines your standard of living.
Right.
So what does Wall Street demand? They want the prices of their stocks propped up, because that's where the transfer of wealth goes from us to the wealthy on Wall Street. So they demand and insist on low interest rates. And to a degree, you know, on a day-to-day basis, it seems to happen. The Federal Reserve comes in and they decide, all right, we'll crank up the printing presses. And that is done when they say, we're going to lower interest rates. How do they lower interest rates? Increase the supply of money. Right. So they crank up the printing presses, and the stock markets pump up. But that's only temporary, because ultimately the market is more powerful than the tinkering, and they can't instill value into money. They can do it for a while, but eventually it's caught on. The world has accepted. But we can't work our way out. We cannot expect the next generation to work so hard that they can pay these entitlements or take care of all the Social Security beneficiaries, all the Medicare demands. The wealth isn't there. Too many of our good jobs are overseas. People are fighting over the pie, and the pie is shrinking. And yet, we now are facing this crisis, and it just seems like all you're hearing is the same old story over and over again. The magnificent thing about the message that we have and the Constitution and what America is all about is that it brings people together. That to me is something, I always knew that, but I didn't realize what it really meant until I've been on the campaign trail. Because our numbers are growing, the enthusiasm is growing, the crowds are getting bigger, and the crowds are very diverse. They come from all walks of life. Because we bring people together because we are unified in one thing, our freedom. We don't try to unify people on lifestyle, religious beliefs, educational beliefs. We bring people together because we just want to be left alone. You know, we want to be good neighbors, but we don't want to tell our neighbors what to do. The same way with economic policy. The money should be your own. The responsibility should be your own. But if you mess up with your life on your social life, even though it's your own choice, or you mess up economically, you can't go to your government and say, well, rob your neighbor and take care of me. But the wonderful thing about a free market, a free society, and sound money is that there would be so much more prosperity. People say, well, if you didn't have the government to provide this safety net, which is a misnomer, because the safety net usually means they're looking out for Mr. Rich Guy on Wall Street is what's happening. But if you remove the safety net but had free markets, you would have more prosperity and a greater chance that more people would share in it. The maximum amount of wealth and the best distribution of wealth is in the freest society possible. We never had a perfectly free society, obviously, but we had the freest. And we had the most prosperous, and now the prosperity we have today, which is still very good, but it's based on debt. And that is the reason why we have to do something about it. And this is a challenge. We probably don't have another generation. When I was asked to run a year ago, I figured, well, it might take another 10 or 15 years to get the enthusiasm up. The enthusiasm is there, and that is why I have been markedly encouraged by what I see and hear. And I believe what has happened is that the need has been seen. Yes. All of a sudden, you know, the failure of the foreign policy, the failure of our economic policy, the undermining of the middle class, the failure of government to take care of the victims of Katrina, the failure of our government to even take care of our own infrastructure. We worry about the infrastructure every place else, and we forget about our own bridges here. So it is something, I think there's been an awakening. But we don't have to invent something new. We don't have to say, well, we have to invent an entirely new system. We're talking about something we know something about. we have the law. The law is really on our side for limited government. People say to me, even today, I've been told a couple times, well, you just want to go back to those ancient times. I mean, back to a constitution that's 200 years old.
That's right.
And I said, yeah.